Dr. Zara lived on a planet far away from Earth, where everything was different. Her world was cold and blue, with two moons hanging in the purple sky. The people there, called Veltari, were very smart but didn't show much emotion. They solved problems with their minds, not their hearts. Zara was one of their best scientists, studying life forms from different planets. When Earth made first contact with alien worlds, Zara got picked for a special job. She would travel to Earth to learn about humans and see if the two worlds could work together. This was huge news back home. Nobody had ever gone to study humans before. The journey took 3 months in a silver spaceship. Zara spent her time reading everything about Earth. She learned that humans were very emotional creatures who made decisions with both logic and feelings. This seemed strange to her on her planet. Feelings were considered weak and unhelpful. When she finally reached Earth, everything amazed her. The blue sky looked so bright compared to her purple home. The air smelled fresh and clean. Plants grew everywhere in green colors she had never seen before. But most surprising were the humans themselves. Humans moved with energy and passion. They laughed loudly, talked with their hands, and showed their emotions on their faces. Zara found this both fascinating and confusing. How could they get anything done while being so distracted by feelings? The Earth scientists welcomed her at a big research center in Switzerland. The building was made of glass and steel, reaching high into the sky. Inside, hundreds of humans worked on different projects. Some studied space, others worked on medicine, and many focused on understanding alien life forms like herself. Dr. Chen, a human woman with kind eyes, showed Zara around the labs. Chen specialized in studying chemicals that control behavior in living things. She explained how certain smells could make animals act in specific ways, like finding mates or avoiding danger. Humans have these chemicals too, Chen said, pointing to various bottles and equipment, but we don't always notice them working. Zara found this interesting but didn't think much about it. Her people didn't rely on such primitive methods for anything important. The research center gave Zara her own small apartment on the 10th floor. The room had a bed, desk, kitchen, and a big window overlooking the mountains. Everything seemed designed for comfort, which was another human concept that puzzled her. Why did comfort matter when you had work to do? Her main contact person was Jake, a friendly human male who used to work in the military. His job was to help Zara understand human culture and make sure she had everything she needed. Jake had brown hair, warm smile, and patient way of explaining things that didn't make sense to her. Humans need breaks from work, Jake explained on her second day. We eat together, talk about non-work things, and rest our minds. It actually helps us work better. Zara didn't understand this logic, but she decided to observe and learn. On her third morning, Zara woke up feeling excited about her research. She had planned to study human blood samples and compare them to Veltari biology. The differences might reveal important information about how humans survived on such a chaotic, emotional planet. She went down to the main laboratory early, before most humans arrived. The lab was quiet and peaceful, filled with the soft humming of machines. Zara enjoyed these quiet moments when she could focus without human distractions. While preparing her equipment, she noticed the small kitchen area where humans kept their food and drinks. Her people didn't need to eat as often as humans, but she had been trying different Earth foods as part of her cultural study. In the refrigerator, she found a small bottle with clear liquid inside. A note attached said energy supplement. Take 1 dose daily. Zara had read that humans often use various supplements to improve their health and thinking abilities. This seemed logical and scientific. Without thinking too much about it, she drank the entire contents. The liquid tasted slightly sweet with a bitter aftertaste. She felt nothing immediately, so she returned to her work, thinking it would help her stay alert during the long day ahead. For the first few hours, everything seemed normal. She examined blood samples under powerful microscopes, took detailed notes, and made careful comparisons between human and Veltari cell structures. The work fascinated her, and she felt proud of the progress she was making. But around noon, something started to change. Her usually steady hands began to shake slightly. Her heart, which normally beat slowly and regularly like all Veltari hearts, started beating faster. Most strange of all, her mind kept wandering from her work to think about other things. When Jake came to check on her progress, Sarah noticed something she had never experienced before. Instead of just seeing him as her human contact person, she found herself paying attention to details that seemed unimportant for work. The way he smiled, the sound of his voice, even how he moved around the lab. "Everything going okay today?" Jake asked, looking at her research notes. "Yes, very productive." Sarah replied, but her voice sounded different even to herself, less controlled. More, something she couldn't identify. Jake stayed longer than usual, asking questions about her findings. Normally, Sarah would have given short, efficient answers and returned to work. But today, she found herself wanting to keep talking to him, to hear his opinions about things that had nothing to do with science. This worried her. Veltari minds were trained to focus completely on important tasks. Personal conversations were saved for specific social times, not during work hours. Something was definitely wrong with her thinking processes. As the afternoon continued, these strange feelings grew stronger. Every time Jake appeared in the lab, her heart would beat faster and her concentration would scatter. She started making small mistakes in her research, something that almost never happened to her. By evening, Sarah knew something serious was affecting her mind and body. The logical part of her brain, still functioning despite these strange sensations, began to suspect that the supplement she had taken might be involved. But she couldn't understand how a simple energy drink could cause such dramatic changes in her usually controlled Veltari physiology. Little did she know that what she had consumed was not meant for any living creature to drink, especially not an alien whose body chemistry was completely different from humans. The real adventure was just beginning, though Sarah didn't know it. Yet, that night, as she lay in her bed looking out at the Earth's single moon, she felt her world starting to change in ways she could never have imagined when she first left her distant, logical home among the stars. The next morning, Sarah woke up feeling completely different from any day in her entire life. Her body felt warm and restless. Her mind, usually sharp and focused like a laser beam, kept jumping from thought to thought like a butterfly in a garden. This scared her more than she wanted to admit. Back on her home planet, Veltari people woke up the same way every day. They had one goal, worked toward it steadily, and went to sleep satisfied with their progress. Emotions were like background music, present but never loud enough to disturb the important work of thinking and solving problems. But today, everything felt loud and bright and overwhelming. She tried to follow her normal morning routine, exercise for exactly 20 minutes, eat a measured portion of food, review her research notes from the previous day, plan her activities with precise timing. But each step felt wrong, like trying to wear shoes that didn't fit during her exercise routine. Instead of counting repetitions and monitoring her heart rate, she found herself staring out the window at the humans walking below. They moved with such energy and purpose, talking to each other with animated gestures. Some were even holding hands or walking very close together. On her planet, people maintained proper distances and communicated only when necessary. When Jake arrived at her lab that morning, something extraordinary happened. The moment Sarah heard his voice calling out good morning from across the room, her entire body responded in ways she had never experienced. Her heart started beating so fast she worried it might be malfunctioning. Her hands became slightly shaky. Most confusing of all, she felt an overwhelming desire to be near him. This made absolutely no sense. Jake was just her human contact person. He was there to help with practical matters and cultural questions. There was no logical reason why seeing him should affect her body's operating systems. "How are you feeling today?" Jake asked, approaching her workstation with his usual friendly smile. Sarah tried to give her standard response, a brief status report followed by a return to work. Instead, she heard herself saying, "I feel different, strange, like my mind is not working the way it should." Jake looked concerned. "Different how?" Are you getting sick? Maybe the Earth environment is affecting you more than we expected? As he stepped closer to check if she had a fever, Zara noticed things about him that seemed completely irrelevant to their work relationship. The way his eyes crinkled slightly when he smiled. How his voice had a warm, gentle quality that made her want to keep listening. Even his scent, which her enhanced alien senses could detect much better than humans could smell each other. I don't think I'm sick, she managed to say, though her voice sounded weird and shaky. But something is definitely wrong with my thinking processes. Jake pulled up a chair and sat down next to her. Normally, Zara would have found this invasion of her personal workspace annoying and distracting. Today, it made her feel something she had no words for, a kind of happiness mixed with nervousness that was completely foreign to her experience. Tell me more about what you're feeling, he said. Maybe if we talk through it, we can figure out what's happening. So Zara tried to explain the unexplainable. She told him about waking up with her mind scattered like leaves in the wind, about feeling drawn to be around humans, especially him, in ways that made no scientific sense, about her heart beating irregularly and her hands shaking for no mechanical reason. As she talked, Jake listened with the kind of attention that made her feel like her problems mattered to him. Personally, not just professionally, this was another, completely new experience. On her planet, people listened to gather information or solve problems, not because they cared about how others felt. Have you eaten anything unusual? Jake asked. Sometimes food allergies or reactions can cause mood changes and physical symptoms. Zara thought back to the previous day. I found an energy supplement in the laboratory refrigerator. The note said it would help with daily energy, so I consumed it. Jake's expression changed immediately. What did this supplement look like? Where exactly did you find it? Something in his voice made Zara pay very close attention. It was a small glass bottle with clear liquid in the shared kitchen area of Dr. Chen's biochemistry lab. Why do you look worried? Because Dr. Chen's lab studies chemical compounds that affect behavior, Jake said slowly. And I don't think that bottle contained what you thought it contained. As the implications of this started to sink in, Zara felt a mix of relief and terror. Relief that there might be a scientific explanation for these strange feelings. Terror that she had accidentally poisoned herself with an unknown human chemical. We need to find Dr. Chen immediately, Jake said, standing up quickly. But as he moved to leave, Zara felt an almost magnetic pull to follow him. Not because it was logical or necessary for solving her problem, but because the idea of him walking away made her feel panicked and alone in ways that didn't make sense. Jake, she called out, her voice sounding more emotional than any Veltari voice should ever sound. He turned back to her, and for a moment their eyes met across the lab. Something passed between them, a connection that had nothing to do with their professional relationship, and everything to do with these new feelings coursing through her alien physiology. I don't want you to leave, she said quietly, surprising herself with the honesty. On her planet, people never admitted to needing others. Independence and self-sufficiency were the highest values. Jake's expression softened. I'm not leaving you to deal with this alone, he said. We're going to figure this out together. That's a promise. The word together hit Zara like a warm wave. She had never realized how much she had been craving that concept, partnership, cooperation, shared experience, until this moment. As they walked through the research center hallways toward Dr. Chen's office, Zara tried to analyze what was happening to her from a scientific perspective. Clearly, she had consumed some kind of chemical that was affecting her brain chemistry and emotional responses. This should have been a simple matter of identifying the compound and finding a way to neutralize its effects. But part of her, growing part that scared and fascinated her, wasn't entirely sure. She wanted these feelings to go away. For the first time in her life, she felt truly alive and connected to another being, even if it was artificial, even if it was caused by alien chemistry reacting badly with human compounds. It was the most interesting thing that had ever happened. To her, the real question was, what would Dr. Chen tell them when they found her? And more importantly, How long would these effects last? Dr. Chen was in her private laboratory when Jake and Zara found her, working with a microscope and taking detailed notes. She was a small woman with graying hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, wearing a white lab coat covered in various chemical stains. When she looked up and saw Zara's distressed expression, her face immediately showed concern. "Is everything all right?" Dr. Chen asked, setting down her equipment. "You look upset." Jake explained what had happened, how Zara had found a bottle in the shared kitchen area and consumed it thinking it was an energy supplement. As he talked, Dr. Chen's expression changed from concern to alarm to something that looked almost like panic. "Oh no," she whispered, sitting down heavily in her chair. "Oh no, no, no. This is very bad." Zara felt her newly unstable emotions spike into fear. "What did I consume? Is it dangerous? Am I going to die?" "You're not going to die," Dr. Chen said quickly, then paused. "But you're definitely not going to feel normal for a while." She walked over to her storage area and opened a locked cabinet. Inside were dozens of small bottles, each labeled with complex chemical names that meant nothing to Zara. Dr. Chen pointed to an empty space where one bottle was missing. "That was a concentrated synthetic pheromone compound," she explained. "I've been developing it for agricultural research to control pest behavior by confusing their mating signals." "Pheromones?" Zara asked. "Those are the chemical signals you mentioned that affect behavior?" "Exactly. In humans, pheromones are usually very subtle. Most people don't even notice them consciously. They just make you feel slightly more attracted to some people and less attracted to others. It's one of the ways humans unconsciously choose partners." Jake was starting to understand. "But Zara isn't human. Her body chemistry is completely different, right?" Dr. Chen said, looking worried. "And what I created wasn't meant for any living creature to consume directly. It was supposed to be released in tiny amounts into the air around crop fields. The concentration in that bottle was probably 1,000 times stronger than what would occur naturally." Zara felt like she was falling down a deep hole. "What does this mean for me? How long will it last?" Dr. Chen started pacing back and forth, thinking out loud. "In humans, pheromone effects usually fade within hours as the body breaks down the chemicals. But your alien physiology might process it completely differently. It could last days, weeks, or even months." Zara's voice came out as almost a whisper. "And there's another problem," Dr. Chen continued. "The compound wasn't designed to be neutralized. I never created an antidote because it wasn't meant to be consumed by anyone." The room fell silent as everyone absorbed this information. Zara sat down hard in the nearest chair, feeling overwhelmed by the implications. Her diplomatic mission to Earth was supposed to last 6 months. If she couldn't think clearly or control her emotional responses for weeks or months, she would fail completely. "What exactly will happen to me?" she asked. Dr. Chen sat down across from her, speaking gently. "Based on what pheromones do in humans, you'll probably experience intense attraction to certain people. Your emotional responses will be much stronger than normal. You might feel drawn to form close connections in ways your species typically doesn't." As if to demonstrate her point, Zara found herself looking at Jake and feeling that strange magnetic pull again. Even knowing it was caused by chemicals didn't make the feeling less real or intense. "Is there anything we can do to reduce the effects?" Jake asked. "Maybe," Dr. Chen said thoughtfully. "We could try to understand exactly how the compound is affecting your brain chemistry, Zara. If we can map what's happening, we might be able to find ways to minimize the impact. Or," she continued more slowly, "you could try to work with the effects instead of fighting them." "What do you mean?" Zara asked. "Well, humans have been dealing with pheromones and strong emotions for thousands of years. We've learned to make decisions and live our lives, even when our feelings are complicated. Maybe you could learn to do the same." This idea terrified Zara more than the thought of being sick. Her entire identity was built around logical thinking and emotional control. The idea of making important decisions while under the influence of these chaotic feelings seemed impossible. "I can't return to my home planet like this," she said. My people would consider me compromised and unfit for diplomatic work, my career. My entire life purpose would be destroyed. Then stay on Earth while we figure this out. Jake said immediately, your research is important, and we want to help you through this. The way he said we made Zara's heart do that strange rapid beating thing again. She realized that part of her, the part being influenced by the pheromones, actually wanted to stay near Jake regardless of the practical considerations. Dr. Chen was watching their interaction with great interest. Actually, she said slowly, this could be a fascinating opportunity for research. We've never had a chance to study how human pheromones affect non-human intelligence. If you're willing, Zara, we could document everything that happens. It might lead to breakthrough discoveries about consciousness, emotion, and chemical influence on behavior. You want to study me like a laboratory specimen? Zara asked, feeling hurt in a way that surprised her. Not like a specimen, Dr. Chen said quickly. Like a colleague who's experiencing something unprecedented. You would be an equal partner in the research, not just a subject. Zara looked back and forth between Dr. Chen and Jake, trying to think through her options with a brain that felt like it was wrapped in cotton. She could try to hide her condition and struggle through her diplomatic duties, while feeling completely out of control. She could return home in shame and give up her life's work. Or she could stay and try to understand what was happening to her, both for science and for her own survival. If I stay, she said carefully, I'll need help. I don't understand these feelings, and I don't know how to function while experiencing them. We'll help you. Jake said without hesitation, whatever you need. The certainty in his voice made Zara feel something she had never experienced before, a sense of safety that came from knowing someone else cared about her well-being. It was terrifying and wonderful at the same time. All right, she said finally, let's try to figure this out together. As the three of them began planning how to approach this unprecedented situation, Zara realized that her simple research mission had turned into something far more complex and personal than anything she had ever imagined. She was about to learn things about herself, about humans, and about the nature of consciousness that no Veltari had ever experienced before. The question was, would she survive the learning process with her sense of self intact? Over the next few weeks, Zara's life became a constant battle between her logical mind and these overwhelming new feelings. Every day brought fresh challenges that no amount of scientific training had prepared her for. Dr. Chen had set up a detailed monitoring system to track how the pheromone was affecting Zara's body and brain. Twice a day, Zara would report to the medical lab for blood tests, brain scans, and psychological evaluations. The data showed that the compound was indeed processing differently through her alien physiology, creating effects that were both stronger and longer lasting than anything seen in human studies. But the hardest part wasn't the medical testing. It was learning to live with feelings that seemed to control her more than she could control them. Simple interactions with Jake became emotional minefields. When he brought her coffee in the morning, she felt grateful in a way that seemed to fill her entire chest with warmth. When he laughed at something she said, she felt proud and happy for hours afterward. When he had to attend meetings without her, she felt lonely and restless. Unable to focus on her own work, these reactions embarrassed her deeply. Veltari people prided themselves on emotional independence. The idea that her well-being now seemed connected to another person's presence felt like a fundamental betrayal of everything she had been taught about strength and self-sufficiency. I don't understand how humans function like this, she confessed to Jake one afternoon as they sat in the research center's garden. How do you make important decisions when your feelings are so loud and demanding? Jake was quiet for a moment, watching the fountain in the center of the garden. I guess we've learned to listen to both our feelings and our thoughts, he said finally. Sometimes emotions give us information that pure logic can't. What kind of information? Well, Jake said, turning to look at her, feelings can tell us what we value, what matters to us, what we want to protect or pursue. They're not always right, but they're not always wrong either. Zara found this concept fascinating and terrifying. On her planet, values were determined through careful, analysis, and community consensus. The idea that individual feelings might be a valid source of information about what mattered seemed chaotic and unreliable. But she was starting to notice that her emotions did seem to be telling her things when she worked on research projects that helped both humans and Veltari understand each other better. She felt excited and energized when she imagined returning to her home planet's rigid, emotionless society. She felt something she was learning to identify as sadness. The most confusing part was her growing connection to Jake. Every conversation revealed new layers of his personality that fascinated her. He had been a soldier before becoming a diplomatic aide, and he carried himself with quiet confidence that made her feel safe. But he was also gentle and patient in ways that no Veltari male had ever been with her. "Can I ask you something personal?" she said one evening as they worked late in the lab together. "Of course. Why are you being so kind to me? This situation is complicated and probably inconvenient for your work. You could have assigned someone else to help me manage the pheromone effects." Jake stopped what he was doing and looked at her seriously. "Do you want the diplomatic answer or the honest answer?" "Honest, please." "The honest answer is that I care about what happens to you, not just because it's my job, but because I've come to admire you, the way you're handling this impossible situation with such courage and grace. The way you're trying to understand feelings that are completely foreign to your experience. Most people would have given up and gone home by now." Zara felt that familiar warmth spreading through her chest. But this time it was accompanied by something new, a deep appreciation for being truly seen and valued by another person. "And if I'm being completely honest," Jake continued, "spending time with you has become the best part of my day." This admission hung in the air between them like a bridge neither was sure they should cross. Zara knew that whatever she was feeling for Jake was intensified by the pheromone, but she was starting to suspect that the chemical had simply revealed something that might have grown naturally over time. "Jake," she said softly, "I need to tell you something. These feelings I have for you, I don't know where the pheromone effects end and my genuine emotions begin. It wouldn't be fair to either of us to act on something that might not be real." "I know," he said, "and I respect that. But Zara, I need you to know that what I feel for you isn't caused by any chemical. I've gotten to know the real you over these weeks, your brilliant mind, your determination, your kindness even when you're struggling. Those things have nothing to do with pheromones." Dr. Chen chose that moment to walk into the lab, carrying a tablet full of test results. She took one look at their faces and smiled knowingly. "Am I interrupting something important?" she asked. "We were just discussing the psychological aspects of the pheromone effects," Zara said, trying to sound professional. "Ah yes, the psychological aspects," Dr. Chen said with obvious amusement. "Well, I have some interesting news about those effects. The latest blood work shows that the pheromone levels in your system are finally starting to decrease." Zara felt a complicated mix of relief and something that might have been disappointment. "How much longer until they're completely gone?" "Based on the current rate of breakdown, probably another 2 to 3 weeks. But here's the interesting part. Your brain scans show that you've developed new neural pathways over the past month. Essentially, you've learned how to process emotions even without the chemical influence." "What does that mean?" Jake asked. "It means that even when the pheromone is completely out of her system, Zara will still be capable of feeling emotions more deeply than typical Veltari. The experience has permanently changed her brain structure in subtle but measurable ways." This news hit Zara like a thunderbolt. She would never be able to return to the purely logical, emotionless existence she had known before. Even after the artificial chemical influence was gone, she would still be fundamentally different from other members of her species. "Is that bad?" she asked uncertainly. Dr. Chen smiled. "That depends entirely on how you choose to look at it. You've gained the ability to experience life in ways that no Veltari has ever experienced before. You've learned to combine logic with emotion to make decisions that consider both practical outcomes and personal values. Some might call that evolution." That night, Zara sat in her apartment looking out at the Earth's moon and thinking about everything that had happened. In just 1 month, she had gone from being a typical Veltari scientist to something entirely new, a being who could think with both her mind and her heart. The question now wasn't whether she could survive the learning process with her sense of self intact. The question was whether she wanted to build a new sense of self that included all of these new capabilities and connections. As she fell asleep, she realized that for the first time since consuming that mysterious liquid, she wasn't afraid of the answer. The final 2 weeks of the pheromones' influence passed like a strange dream. Zara found herself paying attention to every feeling, every reaction, trying to understand which emotions came from the chemical and which might be genuinely her own. Dr. Chen continued her daily monitoring, documenting what she called the most significant case study in cross-species biochemistry ever recorded. But for Zara, it felt less like a scientific experiment and more like discovering who she really was underneath all the cultural conditioning of her home world. The breakthrough came on a Tuesday morning when Jake arrived at the lab with terrible news. "I just received word from the diplomatic council," he said, his face grave. "There's been a political shift on your home planet. The faction that supported Earth contact has lost power. The new leadership is demanding that all Veltari representatives return immediately." Zara felt her heart sink, not because of chemical influence, but because the thought of leaving Earth, leaving this new life she was building, filled her with genuine sorrow. "How long do I have?" she asked. "The transport ship arrives in 5 days. 5 days to decide between everything she had known and everything she was becoming." That evening, Zara walked through the research center one more time, saying goodbye to the places that had become familiar, the lab where she had first experienced confusion and attraction, the garden where she had learned to name her feelings, the small apartment that had become her first real home. Dr. Chen found her in the observation deck, looking out at the city lights below. "The latest blood test came back," Dr. Chen said, sitting down beside her. "The pheromone is completely out of your system now. Whatever you're feeling, it's entirely your own." "How do you know?" Zara asked. "Because I've been watching you for weeks now, and your behavior today is exactly the same as it was yesterday and the day before. If the chemical was still influencing you, we would see changes as it faded. But you're consistent. You're yourself." This confirmation meant everything to Zara. All the emotions she had been questioning, all the connections she had formed, all the ways she had grown, they were real. They were hers. "Dr. Chen," she said carefully, "what would happen if a Veltari chose not to return home when ordered? Officially, they would lose their citizenship and their right to return. But unofficially," Dr. Chen smiled, "they would be free to build whatever life they chose." The next morning, Jake found Zara in the lab earlier than usual, working on a detailed report. "What's that?" he asked. "A proposal," Zara said, looking up at him with clear, determined eyes. "I'm suggesting that Earth and my home planet establish a permanent cultural exchange program. One representative from each world would live long-term on the other planet, studying and reporting back on what they learn. And you're volunteering to be Earth's permanent Veltari representative." "I'm volunteering to be something entirely new," Zara corrected. "Neither fully Veltari nor human, but something that can understand and bridge both worlds." Jake sat down across from her, studying her face. "Are you sure about this? You'd be giving up your entire previous life." "I'm trading my previous life for a life I actually want to live," Zara said. "That seems like a fair exchange." Over the next 3 days, Zara worked frantically to prepare her proposal and present it to both the Earth Diplomatic Council and the Veltari leadership. Her argument was simple but powerful. The universe was too big and too complex for any species to understand alone. By combining logical Veltari analysis with human emotional intelligence, they could solve problems that neither species could handle independently. The Earth Council approved her proposal immediately. The Veltari response was more complicated. "They're willing to consider it," Jake reported after the final communication session, "but they want to review all your research data first. They're suspicious about your emotional changes. Let them review it," Zara said confidently. The data will show that I've become more effective, not less. I can still think logically, but now I can also understand motivations, build relationships, and make decisions that consider long-term well-being alongside immediate practical needs. On the day the transport ship was scheduled to arrive, Zara stood in the spaceport with Jake, Dr. Chen, and several other colleagues who had become friends. The ship appeared as a silver dot against the blue sky, growing larger as it approached. "Last chance to change your mind," Jake said quietly. "I'm not changing my mind," Zara replied. "But I need to ask you something important." She turned to face him fully. "Jake, I know that my feelings for you began under artificial chemical influence, but they've grown into something real and deep and entirely my own. I don't know what that means for the future, but I needed you to know." Jake's smile was brighter than the sun. "It means we have time to figure it out together, as much time as we want." When the Veltari transport ship landed, 3 official representatives emerged. They approached Zara with typical emotional restraint, but she could see curiosity in their eyes. "Dr. Zara Vex," the lead representative said formally, "you are ordered to return for debriefing and reassignment." Respectfully, Zara replied, "I am requesting permission to continue my mission here as a permanent Earth liaison. My research has shown that long-term cultural immersion produces far superior data to short-term visits." She handed them a tablet containing months of detailed research, analysis, and recommendations. "I believe this data will demonstrate that I have successfully adapted to Earth conditions while maintaining my scientific objectivity and analytical capabilities." The representatives spent an hour reviewing her work, occasionally conferring in low voices. Finally, the lead representative looked up. "This research is extraordinary," he admitted. "Your insights into human behavior and psychology are far beyond what we expected, and your proposals for cooperative projects could benefit both worlds significantly. However," he continued, "your emotional adaptation concerns us. How do we know you haven't been compromised?" "Because," Zara said with calm confidence, "I'm still fundamentally Veltari in my approach to problem solving. I still value logic, accuracy, and efficiency. I've simply added emotional intelligence to my toolkit. This makes me more effective, not less." After another lengthy discussion, the representatives reached their decision. "Very well," the leader announced. "Dr. Zara Vex is hereby appointed as the first permanent Veltari liaison to Earth. You will report your findings annually and serve as a bridge between our worlds." As the transport ship departed and the silver dot disappeared into the blue sky, Zara felt a profound sense of completion. She had found her place in the universe, not on her birth planet, not fully on Earth, but in the space between worlds, where understanding could grow. "So," Jake said, taking her hand as they walked back toward the research center, "what happens next?" "We change the universe," Zara said with a smile that was part Veltari determination and part human joy. "One discovery, one connection, one breakthrough at a time." The accident that had brought them together was over, but their real adventure was just beginning. Together, they would explore not just the mysteries of science and space, but the endless possibilities that open up when different kinds of intelligence learn to work as one. In the end, Zara had found something she never knew she was looking for. Not just love, but a completely new way of being herself in a vast and wonderful universe.